I'm Keon.
And this is Inevitable, that podcast where we blow our plan because we tried to get it all done in one day instead of being patient, because this week we watched Living in Harmony.
Written by David Tomblin and Ian L. Rakoff.
Directed by David Tomblin.
And it aired on December 29th, 1967.
This was very funny because the opening of the episode goes written by David Tomblin. It actually goes written, directed, and produced by David Tomblin. That's the second title card after Living in Harmony. I was like, all right, jack of all trades, David Tomblin. I see how it is.
Yeah, what didn't you do? Come on, let some other people work on your stuff.
Well, okay, so there actually, on that topic, there is a very interesting behind-the-scenes story about how this one came to be.
Yeah.
And I got most of my information from correspondent / fan of the show, Boz, reached out and indicated that he actually owned the book that I've been waiting in the mail for the past 13 weeks to arrive, and would be willing to share excerpts from it with us. So he graciously agreed to share some of the pages for Living in Harmony with us. So thank you, Boz, a lot, actually. Really appreciate it. Yeah, so that's where I got a lot of my production information for this, because it is actually very detailed.
Good to know it was all worth the wait that's still going on, that we're still waiting on, that you're still waiting on.
It's interesting because the book seems just like our podcast, but in text form, because it starts with some production information, it goes through the script, talks about differences with the original script, and then ends by talking about like what other things the actors in the episode have been in.
Yeah, wild.
So, neat. So, I don't know how much of this you've looked up and found somewhere else. I mean, I saw, like, references to it in other places. Yeah. Like our classics, Papa Possum, Midnight Only, and
Anorak Zone.
Anorak Zone, which are the three I always have open during these episodes.
Yeah, I usually go Anorak Zone, Midnight Only, and The View from the Junkyard. Kind of abandon all the other ones I used to check every week. But yeah, they all had sort of their own information to provide about all of this.
So apparently, allegedly, this was suggested by Frank Mayer, who still claims credit to this day for coming up with the idea for doing a Western, even though like most people agree that he had nothing to do with the final production of the episode at all. And he just like one day said, hey, we should do a Western, and that was like, that's his claim to fame by his own words.
Frank Mayer, I think, was worked as a stuntman on the show, I believe. Or am I just making that up?
I think so. I think he did, but the more interesting one is that Ian Rakoff actually like wasn't a writer at all. He was an assistant editor, and when they were producing the show and Magoon was like, look, we need to get to 17 episodes somehow, a bunch of assistant editors, apparently like multiple assistant editors, submitted pitches to the show for episodes, and Rakoff's was this Western.
Huh. Yeah, he said he actually based it not on Westerns, but on his time in an anti-apartheid movement.
Yeah, he the book, it's an exact quote is, he had arrived in Britain in 1961 from his native South Africa, where his political beliefs, which he was prepared to carry a gun over, made it difficult for him to stay.
Yeah, according to the sources that I checked, he was literally, he was going to kill someone. Like, Rakoff was like, he was about to go, like, kill someone. And, like, his friends stopped him and were like, you can't do that. It's not, like, the way to go about what we're trying to do here. And that informed his writing of this episode.
Right. He apparently, or someone suggested, calling it Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling, based on that song that they decided to name the Lost episode after instead.
I liked The View from the Junkyard had like a little quip of it. They're like, do not forsake having an actual episode title to make a reference. or something like that.
Wow.
But yeah, I think it kind of just speaks to part of why I personally like the first half of the show more than the second. Things just kind of get muddled here. I think there's a lot more of the episodes that were just like, well, we don't know what to do, so here's this, like in the second half than there are in the first half. Which isn't to say I dislike this episode. I actually like this one quite a bit.
I liked it. A little bored by the end, but I liked it. You know, it wasn't the most exciting story.
No,
but it definitely was far from the worst.
Yeah.
So apparently Patrick McGowan was going to write the story with Raykov. They were going to write it together. But what happened was that they had no money to make the show. So McGowan decided to go shoot Ice Station 0. What was it?
Oh my gosh.
So he buggered off and he was like, look, I'm going to leave you in the very capable hands of David Tomblin. And Raykov was like, okay. Apparently their working relationship was not good. They did not get along well at all. Eventually Tomblin basically just paid Raykov to bugger off and was like, I'll pay you to go just travel around Europe if you just don't take any royalties for writing the story and you just leave. And Raykov was like, okay, sure. And that's why, I'm pretty sure why the opening credits only credit David Tomblin as writing this episode.
Yeah, don't they say like based on a story created by Ian Rakoff or whatever
Yeah,
it was?
I think so.
Yeah. So, I mean, he probably just contributed the concept itself of like, hey, let's do a Western episode.
I think he helped write the first draft. But after that, I do think he was like, bye-bye. Bye-bye now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and yeah, that's like the weird and storied history of how they got there. Then Patrick McGowan came back, was like, well, I guess this will work. And then they did it.
Patrick McGowan really liked the final product of this as well, surprisingly. He really liked Alexei Connor, however you say his name. And I don't think this might be a spoiler to say, but this was noted in the sites that we typically look up, so I'm just going to say it here. He liked the performance enough to give him roles in the 2 remaining episodes that were left to be filmed, which were Fallout and The Girl Who Was Death.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know if you saw that.
I saw that when I was looking at Britain's 10 Actors at the end, that he was in the next 2 episodes. So I kind of figured it was something like that, so that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And this episode also had, even after it was made, had some interesting stuff go on with it. So it wasn't, when the show was first broadcast in the US, which I don't remember the year that was, but when it was first broadcast in the US, they skipped this episode.
Yeah.
The reasons for that are not 100% clear, though I think nowadays most people believe it has to do with the Vietnam War.
Let me see. I had a note here about this. So apparently, since then, it's been officially confirmed by official spokesmen from both CBS and ITC that it was the war commentary that led to it not being aired in the US. So for a long time, that was just speculation, but I think it's been confirmed now that that's why they didn't air this episode.
Mm-hmm. And I think for a long time, the statement, or the official statement about it, was that it was the psychedelic drugs.
Yeah, which is weird given the hippy-dippy usage of drugs in the US in the 60s through the 80s.
And the fact that we've seen drugs be used multiple times throughout the show and not be censored.
Yeah, ABC is the one I always go back to, but it's also not the only one.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, I couldn't find any information about this, but and I believe it was Anorak Zone that said this, but apparently this was even censored in the UK somehow. Until 1984, apparently all broadcasts of this were censored.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that censorship entailed, but yeah. I imagine we didn't watch the censored version.
No, I don't
watched
think we
this
did.
on Amazon, which I believe is the exact same version that Shout Factory has.
Good old Shout Factory. Really wonder about the legitimacy of that whole thing, but it seems legit. Seems legit.
I mean, I'm pretty sure Shout Factory is like a legit streaming service, right?
Yeah, I mean, I believe so.
Just without ads somehow.
I wonder if that's just my ad blocker.
Yeah, well, maybe that's a good point. It might just, yeah. Maybe some of their shows have ads, but The Prisoner is just like, here's this old show that like it's not really making money anymore. So
Did it ever make money?
I mean, it was pretty heavily watched when it first came out. Although TV in Britain is like really weird, and I don't know if like people actually make money from people watching TV and ratings and such.
Well, so this is not a great segue, but I did mention this off recording, and I wanted to mention it on because I thought it was interesting because it did lead to a weird realization that I've been watching a lot of Star Trek Deep Space Nine recently, and I was looking up some information on the episode, and you know, Memory Alpha, the Star Trek wiki, is like what I wish a wiki existed for like every show we've ever watched on this podcast, is because they compile every known like behind the scenes information about the episode onto the episode's page on the wiki, including AOL chats from like the 80s, like AOL chats, 80s, 90s, early 2000s with the creators of the show and what they said about the episode. And it's an incredibly impressive effort. But anyway, they talked about how the episode I watched, whose name I didn't write down now, so that's unfortunate. But I can look it up and get it. So while this is loading, basically I was reading about the production of the episode, and it's Move Along Home. So it's season 1, episode 10. And I read about the production, and it says one of the writers of the episode and the creators of this show were basically like, yeah, the plot of this was basically directly inspired by the Prisoner episode Checkmate. And I was like, whoa, this American sci-fi series in the 90s was like based on / sort of a reference to / inspired by this episode of this British allegorical TV show that aired like 30 years before. Like, I don't know if Prisoner was on home video at that point or not, but like apparently the inspiration goes so far as, and I'm just reading here, that like in early versions of the episode scripts, that because they get put into this like digital virtual game that they have to play. And apparently in some early versions of the script, that game was like a village that they were put into. Just like, wow.
Yeah, and it's we were talking about this before recording, but like let's just repeat some of that here. Like, it's pretty crazy how anything was even inspired by anything. Like, because I mean, before like the late 70s, early 80s, like you couldn't even watch things again. Like, your only chance to watch a movie or show was like when it was in the theaters or when it was on TV, and if you missed it, like, sucks to be you. Like, you missed it until they put it out again.
Yeah, and it's like, it's weird to think about also things like in the 60s and the 70s when directors would put visual references to movies that they liked as kids from the 30s. And it's like, man, like, how many times could you have reasonably seen that movie that you liked as a kid between then and when you made your movie in the 60s or 70s? And remember it enough to put these references in. Like, that's really impressive to me, and also really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we have it easy nowadays. Like, you want to watch any movie in existence, like, it's at your fingertips.
Yeah. You could just pull it up. You just Google it, be like, hey, I want to watch Deep Space Nine, and Google will be like, you want to watch Deep Space Nine? Well, here's 3 legitimate ways and 6 potentially not legitimate ways for you to do that.
And here's 50 other movies you probably want to watch if you like Deep Space Nine or shows.
Yeah. Thanks, Google. I'm always disconcerted when I listen to or read something on a Wikipedia page and then I go to Google, like, something I saw referenced there, and Google immediately knows what I'm referencing, and I'm like, Google.
Yeah, I just try and put that out of my mind, you know, like, just embrace the benefit of not having to type the full thing, which is a small fraction of, like, the dystopian nature of that, but hey, you know.
Great. Good times. Good times. And by good, I mean great. And by great, I mean...
Awful? Bad? Neutral?
So, living in harmony.
Yeah, so, okay, what did you, like, just diving into... what was your impression of, like, the first 5 to 10 minutes of this? I'm very curious because, yeah, just wow.
It reminded me... because it opens with like a Wild West version of the opening theme, and I was like, all right, we're doing a genre episode.
So right away you knew like that this was going to be a Wild West episode. Like you were clued into what this was.
Yeah, because they do the first scene of the opening sequence with him resigning, except in the Old West, so you kind of know.
Yeah. True.
At first I was like, I wonder if this is like implying that the village is the Circle-esque time loop. Circle of Stones-esque time loop. But it reminded me of I used to do improv in high school. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that on the podcast.
At some point in like our hundreds upon hundreds of episodes, yeah.
I used to do improv in high school, and one of the improv games we would play for the audience was this one called Genre Replay, where we would do a 1-minute scene, and then we would get genres from the audience to replay the exact same scene, but we would have to do it in that genre. It was a very difficult game to do right, so to speak. But when it was done right, it was always very funny. But this reminded me of that. It was like the genre replay version of The Prisoner. Someone was like, let's see a Wild West version of The Prisoner.
How about the Wild West? Did you ever think of that?
The ref's like, let's get some genres. And someone's like, a Western. I want to see a Western.
My God.
I don't know why I'm doing that voice for the audience member who's suggesting a Western. I want to see a Western.
No, okay.
Wah, wah, wah. Wah, wah, wah.
Oh, I was going for like a Peanuts, like adult talking, like...
No, I know. And then I took that and realized that you could tie it even back into the Western. It's all full circle.
Oh my gosh. Rest in peace, Morricone.
Oh, but I mean, I was interested. I was interested to see what they were going to do with it. And the whole time I was watching it, I was like, I've seen another show do something like this, where they have an episode that's just a complete other genre version of the regular show. Because sometimes, shows will just do that for fun. But I could not for the life of me think of off the cuff like that a show that had done that, and I still couldn't, even in the time. I just know that I've seen it at some point, but I couldn't remember where.
Did you ever watch Dexter's Lab as a kid? And sometimes the episodes would not be Dexter's Lab, they'd just be like something else. You know what I'm talking about? Like it
Vaguely.
would just follow a completely different cast of characters and not have anything to do with what that show was about.
Some shows still do that now. They use it as like a backdoor pilot. So like that's how NCIS started, was an episode of JAG that like wasn't about the regular cast members of JAG at all, which is these other random characters. And like the recent season of The 100 had an episode like that, where it was just an episode that was like a quote flashback unquote, but it was actually like them seeing if they could make a spin-off about those characters.
Mm-hmm. So did you think that they were going to tie it all back to the village and have it be like, VR, which is basically what it was? Or did you think it was just going to be like a Western episode that was just a self-contained thing that was never explained?
I thought it was going to be the latter. I thought it was going to be self-contained. I thought it was going to be great evidence for my time loop theory that maybe they were like, let's try the West and see if we can break number 6 in the West.
Yeah, I thought the same thing when I first watched it. Well, not the time loop thing, but I thought like that it was just going to be a random Western episode thrown in.
Almost kind of like a like a what would the village in The Prisoner be like if it was set in the Old West instead?
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and one thing to highlight here is that before we even jump in, I think this is a big thing in this episode, because I think it foreshadows a bit what's to come. But like, since like the surveillance systems that obviously the village uses are not as advanced and can't be in the Old West time period, like the goal of this episode is to make to get number 6 to be in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very different. Like which is pretty different to how it usually works in the normal episodes, and is way different than what the show was like set out to be, And this is also the one episode that doesn't ever call number 6, at least not in the Western world. But it's also the only episode that credits number 6 in the credits as number 6, because usually it's just starring Patrick McGowan.
Weird. There are a lot of weird things about that relating to the numbers in this. I know Papa Paso pointed one of them out, is like, and I'm every week I'm constantly impressed at the like work Papa Paso puts into looking up all these obscure things that show up in these episodes. But this week, when you see the judge playing solitaire, he plays solitaire with a deck where instead of an ace, it's an ace, but it's numbered with a 1.
Yeah, it's a 1 of spades.
It's a 1 of spades. And what's his name? Clayton Barr, who wrote the Papa Paso page about this, says that he could find no reference to any deck of cards that uses a number 1 historically. And he was theorizing that maybe this is some sort of indication to like, number 6's goal to find out who number 1 is normally, or who is number 1 in the Western village. So very interesting. Also, Papa Paso notes that a lot of the wanted posters hanging in the Western village in this episode are real life wanted posters that they had printed and put up on the set. The Tom Nixon, Oliver Curtis Perry, and posters are both real as far as I know, according to Clayton Barr, who's got pictures of the actual posters. There's also one for Sam and Belle Starr.
Huh, interesting.
So, anyway, yeah, I mean, I'm ready to jump into the plot of the episode if you want.
Yeah. So like we said, it starts with a Wild West version of the intro, where you see number 6, or whoever this guy is. He's never called number 6 again in the Wild West.
Definitely number 6, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's number 6. Like, it's
Or no, yeah, I mean, obviously it's number 6, but like we don't know. Like he's just never called number 6 in like the Western.
Oh, like in the context of Harmony, we don't know if he's number 6 or not. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So he resigns from being sheriff, gives up his gun, gives up his badge, and rides off and gets captured by a group.
And gets beat the hell up.
Yeah.
I have multiple notes for this episode that say, and then number 6 died because they had no medical procedures in the West and no sanitary way to sanitize those bullet wounds he's been suffering the whole episode.
Yeah, gets a small cut on his hand and dies.
Yeah, gets sepsis, dies.
Well, he's dragged to Harmony, a village in the West, in the middle of nowhere.
Thanks, Pat, I guess.
He comes across this guy. He's like, hey, where am I? The guy's like, hey, you're in Harmony. I was like, where's that? And he's like, here.
Right, literally right here. Like you're standing on it. Number 6 is reluctant to even stay in the town. He's like, screw this. I want out. I want to, leave, basically. It's a little unclear where he wants to go. He just wants to leave Harmony.
Yeah, I'm sure if there was a town forcing you to stay, you'd probably want to leave.
True. Yes, that is true.
So he goes into the bar, and he meets the kid.
Yeah, so the book mentions that the biggest change from the first to the last draft of the script is that the kid was originally a speaking character.
Mm-hmm.
And it lists off his dialogue, which is incredibly cringeworthy. I'm really glad that they cut all of it. And it's not like, okay, let me just clarify here that I found it cringeworthy because it's like, it doesn't sound real. It sounds like it's playing off the stereotype of what a Western is. It doesn't sound like what someone would say.
Which is perhaps fitting for the episode, Like,
perhaps.
This isn't really a real Western town. It's the village's Western setup.
Yeah, perhaps. So, he meets the kid.
Yeah, and personally, regardless of the lines, which I obviously haven't read, like, I think it was a good decision to cut the kid's lines because he's basically the best part of the episode.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, he's just he's really odd, he's weird, he's extremely violent and unnerving, and he's pretty unpredictable.
It's super interesting. It's super interesting. And this was pointed out by Pop Apostle. This isn't, let's just say this isn't necessarily an original thought.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to reproduce it because it's, I think there's benefit to doing so, that the kid is interestingly very much a sort of mirror of the butler. The butler is small, stout, doesn't talk, is omnipresent as the second kind of in command to number 2 the entire time. And then in the Old West village, the kid is tall, limber, quiet all the time, and always appears as the second in command to the sheriff, to the judge, sorry.
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
And that to me is another reason why I'm glad that they cut his lines, because it creates that kind of parallel between the kid and the butler that otherwise may not have been there.
Mm-hmm. So things are obviously off to a bad start for number 6. The kid shoots his drink.
Devastating.
And then he meets the judge, who's playing solitaire at a little table. Right off the bat,
I don't know what variant of solitaire the judge is playing, but it looks more boring than normal solitaire.
Oh, huh. I don't even know how to play the normal version, so yeah.
I say normal, but I'm really referring to like the most common form. I shouldn't say normal because that implies that all other ones are not normal.
Maybe he's just laying the cards out randomly and pretending.
Maybe.
Anyway, right off the bat, he wants number 6 to be their new sheriff.
Right. Very suspicious.
And number 6 is like, nah.
I'm
just gonna leave.
Nah.
So he goes outside and he tries to buy a horse, but they're $5,000, which I imagine the Old West is like $5 billion or something.
Yeah. The instant he said $5,000, I was like, my God, is that an expensive horse?
Yeah, like imagine if you went to like buy a pack of gum at the store and like it ended up being like $1 million. Like that's like, I feel like that's the equivalent of what this is.
I'm here for this hyperinflation. Just imagine.
Without increased wages, of course.
Of course.
Because why? How could you ever have inflation with increased rates of pay to match?
Exactly. Zimbabwe would like a word with you. You are now the finance minister for Zimbabwe.
So then we get a first-person lynching.
Yeah, the prisoner really seems to be liking their first-person shots right now.
Yeah.
Really seems to be liking their shots.
I wrote it down. We get first-person from a lot of different characters in this episode. We get it from Kathy's brother, who had a name, who's the guy who gets hanged here. We get first-person from Kathy herself, who I think we've actually met by this point in the episode. She's the bar person, whatever.
Yeah, she works in the Silver Dollar Saloon, which weirdly enough, we have a Silver Dollar Saloon nearby. I thought it sounded familiar, so I punched it into Google, and then Google Maps came up, and I was like, that's why it sounds familiar.
Whack.
There are like dozens of Silver Dollar Saloons across the U.S., I found out. So wherever we are not unique, apparently.
Yeah, and why don't we just mention it? This week on the Torchwood episode that we watched, which was Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, check out Trust Your Doctor, a Doctor Who podcast. In the background, there was a shop labeled Village Barber.
Yeah.
Which Dylan actually noticed, not me.
Yeah, but still.
God.
Good. The proof is in the pudding.
The proof is in this show that came out 50 years later and has nothing to do with the prisoner. I say as I point to my conspiracy wall.
Your conspiracy wall. Do you have a wall of pictures of like Patrick McGowan and David Tomblin with red string connecting everyone?
Circled randomly with arrows all over the place.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
You should make one.
Perhaps. But that would be effort.
Mayhap. So anyway, where are we in the episode?
So, Kathy's brother gets hanged.
Right.
They take number 6 to the prison in protective custody, is what they say. They lock him in, but then to appease... Well, they don't actually explain why they do this, but in my mind it was to just appease the mob mentality and and yeah, that's it, just appease the mob. They drag Kathy's brother out of the jail and in first person lynch him.
I mean, they are literally appeasing the mob. Like the judge says as much because he says like wouldn't want to wouldn't want to disappoint them.
Mm-hmm. So they don't want to kill number 6 because he wants number 6 to be the sheriff. But they have to have someone else to take the fall here. Literally, I guess.
So I guess they just pick literally the only other guy in the jail to take the fall.
Yeah. Kathy tries to stop it, but she can't. And she doesn't.
Yeah, can't stop the mob.
No.
So she's devastated by this and decides to
try and
help number 6 escape,
right.
Basically.
Essentially playing the role that like most it's actually not even most, but it's a common thing that this show does, where it's like the female character of the week is the one who tries to help number 6 escape, but is secretly on the side of the village. Like we've seen it at least 3 times before.
Yep.
They just keep doing the same thing again and again and again.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, after the revelation that number 6 has a fiancé, I'm wondering, like, he just goes after these women every week, like...
He doesn't really. And that's partly Patrick McGowan being...
He did in There was kind of an implication of something in was it Chimes of Big Ben, or I think it was Chimes of Big Ben,
with
between him and
Nadia,
what's her name, Nadia. Yeah,
I guess, but like I don't know. I just don't know.
yeah. I mean, we'll never know.
So it turns out that the kid is the jailer. But he's
Yeah, he also works for the judge. I mean, we knew he worked for the judge. We didn't know he was the jailer.
Yeah, I feel like this isn't in the episode, but I always got the impression that he just did whatever like needed to be done. I didn't like he wasn't explicitly the jailer, but like since there was people in jail to be watched, then he was just doing it.
Yeah, he kind of seems like an everyman almost.
Yeah, Everyman Productions.
God damn it.
Speaking of Everyman Productions, was it just me or were the credits? I know we're totally out of sequence here, but were the credits backwards this week? Like because Everyman Productions is listed first in the credits this week, as is the ITC logo and that stuff. And I couldn't remember if that was always the case.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't pay much attention to the credits, so.
Yeah, neither did I in my previous 2 watches of this show, and now this time paying like at least some attention to the credits, I'm realizing they do a lot of weird stuff with the credits in this show.
Just want to let you simmer for a little bit.
Just want to get the brain muscles moving. It's a very bad image, but hey, I'm rolling with it. Just want to.
I was gonna say, brain's definitely not a muscle.
Also shouldn't be moving. But
Probably not. I mean, but maybe I don't know. Maybe
banging around the old skull concussing you. Just a real way to watch The Prisoner.
Maybe you're a Dalek, you know? Maybe you're a Dalek. I mean, they look like brains that move.
Anyway, the kid is also just drunk. And Kathy uses this as an opportunity to slip the jail cell keys onto the windowsill. And it's pretty nice, you know, the fact that 14 episodes in, the prisoner, aka number 6, is finally an actual prisoner in a jail cell.
Yeah. And he has no means of escape. He's just stuck, and the rest of the show takes place inside this jail cell.
Yeah, it just goes to show you that, like, you know, back then you actually had to imprison someone for them to be a prisoner, but now we're all just prisoners in society itself. So you don't even need jail cells anymore. You just need a place like the Village, a stand-in for modern life.
Damn. Deep. Deep.
So it works. Number 6 sneaks out while the kid is asleep. And he flees. He flees through the rolling, verdant green hills of the American West.
Yeah. I guess this is like, I don't know, Oklahoma? Idaho?
Somewhere around there. Yeah, somewhere around there if it weren't for, you know, the non-flat landscapes indicating that this clearly takes place in Britain.
The British Wild West.
Yeah, the British part of America.
Oh yeah, the British part of America.
I can't believe
I found out that, you know, I think that joke originated, or at least was bolstered by Perry's accent. I found out that I don't remember if we mentioned this on the podcast, that like Nicola Bryant like faked being American to the production team, and that's the only reason they hired her. They wanted an American actress to play that role, allegedly, and she had put on an American accent in a stage production that was seen by an agent who was like, "Why don't you try out for this Doctor Who role?" And she's like, "Yeah, but I'm not American." And the guy's like, "Well, if you fooled me, you can fool them."
Wow, I never knew that. That's amazing.
She also apparently couldn't swim. I think we mentioned that one.
Yeah, I think we mentioned that of like, yeah, first episode, push her in the deep ocean.
Well, apparently she tells the story about how like she didn't know how to swim, so she was going to learn from her cousin before the show started because they had a swimming scene. And they were like, okay, so you can swim. You're going to actually have to pretend to drown. And she said something like, drowning, that's my natural talent, because she couldn't swim.
Boy, oh boy.
Anyway, yeah, just a little sidebar about the British part of America there.
Anyway, I can't believe we got this far in the episode without mentioning the absolute god-awful American accents on display. The judge is fine. The judge is pretty good, actually.
Yeah, the judge is actually fine. I didn't notice anything wrong with it.
I think the guy who played the judge is actually American. Or he's like one of those weird American British people like Patrick McGoohan, which like, yeah, Patrick McGoohan's accent is flat out terrible. Which one of the sites that we looked up mentions is actually kind of ironic given the fact that he is actually technically American. He was born in the U.S.
Yeah, so David Bauer, who played number 2, was born in Chicago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Patrick McGoohan, I believe, was born in like New York or something, but didn't live there for long.
Apparently David Bauer left America because of the anti-communist hysteria in Hollywood.
Huh? Wow.
Interesting.
But yeah, Patrick McGoohan's pseudo-Southern drawl. I don't even want to call it that. I don't even want to call it a pseudo-American accent or anything because it just wasn't. It was pretty bad.
It was just David McGoohan talking, really.
Patrick, yeah.
In a really weird accent.
Yeah, just trying to get a little more rhotic with his R's.
Thanks, Dave.
Failing.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, you gotta wonder how much of this was like David Tomblin directing. It was like, all right, you gotta really lay it on thick here, and like the actors just weren't able to do it. Especially that guy.
You gotta really sound like you're from the South, and they're like, I don't know how to do that, so
South of England.
Like, just try. Yeah, South France. I can do South France.
Especially that guy who steps up later and he's like, but Judge, he was in protective custody. There's no, or like whatever that guy's lines were.
My favorites are the ones who just didn't even try. Like, I'll be the British man in the Wild West today.
I'm sure there were British people like in the middle of nowhere, Wild West America. Like, yeah, we'll just be one of those like, outliers.
Probably.
Anyway, when the judge, who at this point in the episode, it's pretty clear that the judge is like Harmony's number 2.
Yeah. I mean, obviously. Yeah. Just like his outfit alone says that. Mm-hmm.
He walks into the jail and he slaps the kid out of the chair because number 6 has escaped.
Just full open hand straight to the face. Mm-hmm.
With a nice slap sound effect to go along with it. Number 6 is brought back. He's dragged back, literally. He's bound and dragged back to Harmony.
And so they, and by they I mean the judge, basically just threatens to kill Catherine because he puts on a trial and number 6 obviously thinks it's going to be for him, and then the judge goes, no, you're fine. Catherine, you aided and abetted in a prison break. How do you plead? She's like, not guilty.
I don't think we...
But then everyone finds her guilty.
Do we hear her verdict, or does it just cut to black and then we get...
No, we do hear her verdict, because we see some people come in and they go, we find her guilty.
Sorry, not her verdict, her plea.
Oh, no, I don't think we hear her plea. I think she just goes, what?
Yeah, she just says... And then you cut to, like, where would have been a commercial.
So, number 6 is saddened by this. I mean, this does seem like number 6, like... I mean, the whole plan was to have him fall in love with her, like... Which to me is a big with the fact that he's got a fiancé, but anyway. I guess it's been a year.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I like the idea that we've only seen like 15 adventures in the village, but all of them are like a day, maybe too long at best, and he's been there for a year. Like, what other stuff has been going on?
Yeah, what have we missed? Maybe the comics and other stuff will fill those gaps in.
Guess we'll see. That seems like a foreshadowing for what we're going to do next.
Yeah. Anyway, the kid gets real mad for some reason. I don't remember why, but he confronts number 6 and pulls his gun on him.
Right.
I think maybe he thinks, or he thinks that number 6 is partly responsible for Catherine's death. So he wants to get revenge.
Well, she's not dead yet.
Or Catherine's
not dead
imprisonment.
yet. Yeah, she's just in prison, and that's how the judge gets number 6 to be the sheriff, because he tells number 6, he's like, look, I'm going to hang her, but if you become the sheriff, I'll let her go free.
Right. So number 6, he takes up the badge, but not the gun yet.
Right, he refuses to carry a gun, so he takes up the badge and starts patrolling the town without a gun.
Yep.
And so the judge kind of enlists some people to show number 6 why he should carry a gun.
Yeah, no gun Zeke. It's like, I haven't heard the name Zeke in like 10 years.
So they beat him up.
Yeah, there's a long brawl, like probably one of the longest the show has ever done.
Yeah, a lot of this episode is just people beating number 6 up. I mean, by the end of the episode, he looks like he's in pretty bad shape. And again, like, the kid shoots him, but like just so that the bullet grazes him. And I was like, he would be dead now because there is like no antiseptics in the West. Like, number 6 is dead in a couple days from like infection.
Yeah. But it's okay. It's just the fake Wild West.
The fake Wild
West. It's the west of Britain because they're all the way on the coast of Wales. So, yeah.
Can't stop us now, Judge.
So, oh gosh. Okay, so yeah, this is kind of an aside, but like during the fight scene, we see the first appearance of a kid on the prisoner. Like, there's just a kid like in the background, and I'm pretty sure that's the first. If you watch it in this order, this is the first kid on the entire show.
I think you're right. I think that is the first kid we see on this show.
Weirdly enough. Yeah, because
that's pretty bizarre.
Yeah, the village. Because I guess the village doesn't kidnap kids.
I would hope not.
What if you had kids like in the village?
That would suck. Would you be allowed to name them? Or would you just have to like... Yeah, would you be allowed to name them, or would they just be assigned a number as soon as they're born?
Yeah, good question. Question the show never bothers to answer.
Probably because it's not that important, really.
No, yeah, it's literally not what the show is about at all, or important at all. But yeah, number 6 still does not take up arms.
He does not bear arms on behalf of the village, even though he has his Second Amendment right to.
Exactly. That's how you know that this is all fake and staged by the village, and that, these aren't real Americans, because, number 6 won't touch that gun for the life of him, and that's just not the American way.
Truth, justice, and the American way. Thanks, number 6.
He confronts Catherine at night in the bar, and I just thought this scene, which was supposed to be romantic and stuff, was so hilarious because Catherine she says completely lifelessly and soullessly, "I'm blushing," and her face is like literally paler than the surface of the moon. Like, Yeah. The visuals not matching up to the dialogue here. Although, when you find out what all this is, makes sense. But so I think at this point the kid decides that it's a good idea to molest and strangle Catherine to death. Molest Catherine and strangle her to death.
Yeah, he kisses her, and it looked like he was like gonna bite her tongue off. Like it really looked like he was biting her tongue.
But then she basically does that. She bites his tongue or lip or something, and he starts bleeding, and that's when he, decides to kill her.
Death to Catherine.
The
Do
girl
not
who was
forsake
death.
me, oh my darling.
Oh my god. Yeah, what if the girl who was death is just a typo for like the girl who was dead?
That'd be pretty funny, actually. I'm gonna be honest, that'd be pretty funny.
Typos in Albertus. The new spin-off of The Prisoner. So Catherine's dead. Number 6 decides to bear arms, decides to put on his gun.
Yeah, he decides to finally take up the gun, the mantle.
And in a super quick standoff with the kid, he kills the kid.
Yeah, he's the quickest gun in the West. I mean, literally, he kills him without, like... I didn't even process that was what had happened. And then I was like, oh, he's dead. He dead.
We actually skipped an entire sequence where number 6 tries to escape. Again.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we skipped that, and then because he wants to escape with Catherine, but he realizes that Catherine didn't make it to the point, the rendezvous point, so he goes back. And that's when he finds out that Catherine's dead, I believe.
Yeah. No, that's right.
Because he lassos that tree branch and then just Tarzans into this guy who's standing in his way, which I thought was pretty funny.
Get wrecked.
So the kid's dead and Catherine's dead, and the illusion is wearing off.
The illusion is broken.
Number 6 wakes up and he's in his village clothes, not his Wild West clothes. And he has a headset on, like a VR, proto-VR headset type thing.
Right. And he's like, wow, this is, what the hell? And he sees the kid. Well, actually, no, he's in the saloon, so he sees the judge, but it's just a cardboard cutout of the judge in black and white.
Mm-hmm. And the same with the kid outside. And the whole town is deserted, so he leaves, and he winds up in the village.
Yeah, he kind of just walks down a hill, and he's in the village, and I was like, huh. He looked really shocked that he'd never found the... he had never found, the western part of the village before.
I always thought, and they don't ever make it clear in the episode, but I always thought they constructed this for... this plan. This was never a part of the village before, but they just made the entire town for this plan.
That would make a lot more sense than him just never stumbling upon this ever.
It also gets very meta with the sets here because you look at the saloon set and the jail and they look like TV sets. They don't, they look put together to the level that you'd expect maybe in a theater set where it's all right, at some level the illusion of watching theater, unless you're watching a very high budget production, is broken, and you just have to accept that because of the literal wood that you're seeing that was obviously put together right before the show. Not right before, but before the show. Mm-hmm. But here it is like that, the stairs in the saloon look very new, not worn, anything like that. And then you find out at the end that it's actually part of the episode because, yeah, I think they did just construct this place for the plan.
Yeah, I think you're right. That makes a lot of sense.
We cut to the control room. Number 2, who's the judge, is I knew this would never work. And number 8, aka the kid, is like, then why'd you go along with it?
The kid basically chastises number 2 for this by saying, like, well, if you had been a little slower and more patient, it probably would have worked because it was working. And I kind of got the sense that number 2 had pushed for them to really try and get this done like ASAP. And that's why they, like, in one day tried to enlist number 6 to be the sheriff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just kind of weirdly plays into, stuff Patrick McGowan has said about the show and stuff you can kind of pick up on in this show of like, yeah, slow is good and fast is bad. Except weirdly, this is like on the Village's side at this point.
Yeah, for once the Village was the one who should have been the slow is good.
Yeah. Anyway, Kathy is there too. She's just sort of crying in the corner because I guess she actually did, start to have some sort of attachment to either number 6 or the Western setting, or both.
Yeah. I think number 8 has a line saying something about how she was actually falling for him, and that's how they thought that it would work.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were falling for each other. At the very least, she was falling for him.
So she goes back to the saloon, and the kid, number 8 shows up, and he lapses back into the kid character and strangles her.
Right. She begs him to stop and is like, it's over, what are you doing? It's over. She does have enough time to tell number 6 that number 8 killed her before she dies. Papa Parcel questions this. Their actual phrasing. If number 22 could survive her throttling by number 8 long enough to tell number 6 she wished it had all been real, then there's no real reason why she should have died right there. She didn't appear to be physically injured in any way beyond the brief choking off of oxygen.
It's just, I don't mind stuff like that. It's
for dramatic purposes. Yeah. And that's fine. That's fine.
And then, just like in the Western simulation, kid dies too. I forget how the kid dies. He kills himself. Yeah, yep. Was that on purpose or not? Because he walks up to the second floor and then he kind of just flops over the side of the railing and dies.
I'm inclined to believe it was on purpose. on purpose.
Yeah, because I think
that he just launches himself over the railing.
Yeah, I think he was in the kid character at that point. So I think, he probably,
Right.
The judge and number 6 walk in, and they're like, whoa, what the hell?
Yeah, number 2 kind of just looks disappointingly around everything, extremely confused. He's like, what's the hell happened here?
Number 6 has some witty line before walking out, and that's the end of the episode.
Yep. C'est la vie.
So that ends one of the strangest episodes of the Prisoner.
Very odd episode of The Prisoner, but I liked it.
I think, and this again, I think is a point to watching them in this order, and that the original broadcast order is maybe the best. But I think this show this episode marks a turning point in the show, where like the village, at least in this simulation, and this like there's going to be some runoff of this, I think, if I remember correctly, in the next couple of episodes as the show winds down, of like the village, or Harmony in this case, is not trying to like, they asked number 6 why he resigned from being the sheriff, but like what their real goal here is to put number 6 in charge.
Right.
And
it's interesting that they're not really trying to get, again, they're not trying to get out of him like why he resigned.
Yeah, that's almost, and they even mention it, but it's almost as if it's like a passing thing. Like they don't even care. They're just a little bit maybe curious as to why he resigned, but that's not really their goal. Their goal is to make him the sheriff.
Yeah, there is a throwaway line right when he meets the judge. The judge says something like, "Oh, you resigned your commission," and he says yes, and the judge kind of insinuates he wants to know why, and number 6 just doesn't answer.
Mm-hmm. As we watched the show this time, I noticed something that I had never noticed watching it before, which is that like there is a slow and gradual. If you watch the episodes in the order we did, there's a pretty slow and gradual shift from like really heavily doing what the premise of the show is, which is like number 6 trying to escape, and number 6 trying to find out who number 1 is, and the village trying to stop him from escaping and trying to find out why he resigned. Like the early episodes are very heavily about that, but as the show goes on, it becomes less and less about that.
And more experimental.
Yeah, well, and even more about the village just trying to like mess with number 6, and number 6 trying to mess with the village. And now I think we're at another turning point where it's like the village is trying to put number 6 in charge.
Yeah, that's true. It turned into it became who can mess with the other person the most into can we get number 1 to just number 6 to basically be number 1. I assume number 1 runs the village, even though we've never seen them.
Yeah, number 1 has done such a terrible job of like trying to break number 6 over the year that he's been there, and the number 2s have also not succeeded. So at this point, they just want number 1 in charge.
They just want a new number 1.
Or sorry, they want number 6 in charge of the village.
I am number 1. I am not a free man, I'm a number. There was kind of a hint of that with the election episode where he wins and
yeah,
ostensibly becomes the leader of the village, but then it turns out that was all part of the plot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also find it interesting, like we were talking about before, that there's like a literal TV set almost built into the show. Like we talk about the Matrix, we talk about the prisoner being like, haha, however many matrices deep, but like this is literally like a simulated version of the Wild West inside this simulated version of society inside this larger thing.
Oh,
you know?
Jeez.
Yeah, I know we've mentioned this on many of our podcasts, but you know, Baudrillard in Simulation and Simulacra, or what the hell that book is called. Like mentions,
whatever the hell that book is called.
I don't like, what is it? A simulacra and simulation?
Yeah, I think it's simulacra and simulation.
Yeah, how do you even pronounce simulacra? I don't know how to pronounce it because there's no pronunciation guide in books unless you listen to audiobooks.
Simulacra. There we go. That's how you pronounce it. Simulacra.
Oh, boy. And plus it was written in French too originally, so like that's just
Le simulacre.
Yeah. Oh,
there you
boy.
go. Nailed it.
But anyway, one of the things that is discussed in that book is how, like, Disneyland has this simulated, you know, version of America, which is the Main Street Disneyland portion, the part where you, like, right when you walk into Disneyland, you're in the like, 1950s Main Street or whatever. And he says that that is to obscure the fact that, like, all of society is actually a simulation.
Okay,
and,
whoa.
Well, and I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like, it sounds odd, but, like, if you think about it, like, your own, like, even if you think of, like, people who are imprisoned, like, in jail and prisons, like, today, like, they only lack freedom in relation to everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So by that token, everyone else, like, the rest of the population only has freedom in relation to their being people imprisoned. And, like, so if you extrapolate that to, like, society, like, yeah, society is, like, Disneyland is only simulated in relation to our society, so therefore the rest of society is only not a simulation because we have Disneyland. And that's, like, you can take that to, like, other places too, like imperialism, right? Like, you know, when the British were conquering the world and claiming their own superiority, like, they could only do that because there were other people, other groups that they said that they were superior to. Like, you can't be superior if there's no one to be superior to, type thing.
Yeah, I guess it's the if everyone's super, then no one is.
Yeah. So I just find it interesting that, like, you know, number 6, there's a very, like, striking visual of him walking out of the Western saloon, supposedly, escaping the Western world, the simulation they've put him in finally, because, the key players are dead. But that, it only happens once exactly what happens in the simulation happens in quote unquote real life. That, the kid and Catherine die. And he walks out of this episode. He's free of the Western simulation, and where he's freed into is the village. Which just makes you question, like, if he does escape the village, maybe he's just being freed into an even larger simulation type thing, or something like what Baudrillard says of, like, even he's only freed into a society that can only exist because the village itself exists type thing. I don't know, man. It's weird.
This is too deep and complex for me. Yeah. So basically the idea is that, like, what, society can't exist without something that simulates society so that you can separate what is society from what isn't society, essentially. So, am I understanding this correct?
I don't know, because I don't even, like, I've read this snippet of multiple times, and I just get what I get out of it, so.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, in a way, the creation of a miniature village within a village makes the village itself almost more legitimate as, like, a form of society then, because society has a village within it that's there for unmutuals and retired secret agents and so on and so forth. And now even within the village, they have their own miniature village that they use for other nefarious purposes. If you catch what I'm saying here.
I guess, yeah. I mean, I think the idea is just that it's all relative. Like, you think you live in a society or a world that's, like, real, and you think you can point to places like Disneyland and say that's not real. Or you think you're free, and you can point to prisons and say, like, I'm free because, look, like, I'm not imprisoned. Like, they're not free, and I am. But, like, that's just relative.
All right. Okay.
I think that's the idea, basically.
Interesting.
Which, now that I think about it, A, B, and C actually does a weird riff on that, where they remember, like, number 2 in that episode, and whatever the scientist woman's name was, they watch the intro sequence on the screen. Like,
oh, jeez.
Yeah.
We also see the, like, Western version of the intro sequence, and, like, there's no clear distinction on whether that's also part of the, like, simulation, or if that's just for the audience's benefit. Like, we don't know.
Yeah, that's true. We don't really. I would be inclined to believe that it's the former. Like, it's actually they dropped him out in a field somewhere, or they made him resign with drugs or whatever, or hypnosis maybe, and that was all part of the plan. But yeah, I guess we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's the more fun option.
Exactly, and as the hedonists we are, it's the one we have to abide by. I'm sensing some reluctance to go along with what I just said.
You would be correct. You would be correct. But anyway, I don't know anything more about it.
But do you know who would be number 1 if there was a number 1 in this episode?
No.
I don't either. My answer was just NA for this one. Like,
my answer was triple question mark. I mean, number 2 seems too oblivious, and just the fact that this is all a simulation within a simulation, just like, I don't even know who's real and who's not.
Yeah, this is like this is like, you ever see those like tests, those math tests that people post online? It's like find X, and they just circle X in the question, like found it.
Yeah.
As for win or lose, I don't know. I was kind of torn on this one because, again, number 6 does kind of come out of this scathed.
Scathed. I was a little unsure about this as well, because he loses. I mean, he doesn't get broken necessarily, but he does kind of. He doesn't have control over the situation, and even at the end, he has no control over what happens. And I think that, to me, kind of makes it lean towards this might be more of a defeat than a victory, but I think you could make an argument either way.
Yeah, and I think just the fact that there was a simulation here is like, he escapes a simulation, and he, like, quote unquote, wakes up from that and is like, yes, I'm free. I'm in the village.
Ah, damn it. Oh, well. He's just like, well, oh, well, she's dead, I guess.
Yeah.
He's just like, well, whatever. I mean, kind of seems like how he does actually act, but...
Yeah, on some level, maybe McGowan himself was kind of sociopathic, but, like, number 6 isn't fully. He cares to some extent.
Yeah. A little bit. A little bit. Well, I actually don't have much else to say about this.
Nah, neither do I, but we have to go into our actors here, because there were a couple good ones in this episode.
That's true. Britain's 10 actors. You want to take it away?
Sure. So we already mentioned Alexi. I don't know how to... Canner. Yeah. Well, he's French, so I'm assuming his first name is Alexi and not Alexis.
Yeah.
He played the kid / number 8. He didn't have an extensive career. According to Wikipedia, he was mostly known...
Seems legit.
He was mostly known for this show, but he was also in The Saint. He was in Softly Softly, and he was in UFO, so if / when we watch UFO, we'll see him in that.
Right. So next I have David Bauer, who plays the judge. Like I mentioned earlier, he was born in America, so he's American. Diamonds Are Forever. Softly Softly Task Force. He was also uncredited in You Only Live Twice. He was also in The Saint, The Avengers, and The Baron. All big British TV shows of the 60s.
Mm-hmm. And we have Valerie French as Kathy. She also didn't have an extensive career. She was in something called The Alaskans. I guess that was a big role for her, and a bunch of other stuff. And she was in something, weirdly enough, called Have Gun, Will Travel, which is the exact opposite of number 6 in this episode, who doesn't carry guns and can't travel because he can't leave Harmony.
She was also in an adaptation of And Then There Were None under its second name.
Oh, yeah. Huh.
I also looked up Gordon Tanner, the town elder. He didn't really have many credits, but he was in Doctor Strangelove, the Stanley Kubrick movie. And that's kind of the only thing I recognized for him.
Yeah. That's all I got overall.
Yeah, so... Emails. Okay, so we have 3 emails from Sergeant Drano this week, 2 relating to the prisoner and 1 relating to Sapphire and Steel. So the prisoner, let's start with a change of mind. Good morning, a change of mind. This episode is one of a few that I managed to record on VHS the very first time I watched The Prisoners, so I've seen it a lot more than many other episodes. To me, it could be almost the perfect example of a prototypical episode, one where if someone asks, what is The Prisoner about? You can show them this episode and they will know. I'm really surprised you guys didn't like this episode. I found the whole thing to be really effective and dark in the way that I like, but still with an upbeat ending. I honestly had no idea that most of it was filmed with backdrops, so I guess it wasn't obvious to me. To me, this is one of the creepiest number twos, but my take on the actual plot of this is a lot different than yours. I don't think this whole thing is orchestrated by number two, even though number six thinks it is. I think a fair bit of it is number two trying to run damage control and number six's dickish behavior with the committee. When number two says he can't help number six if the committee goes against him, I think he's actually being truthful about that. Number two has this directive that number six can't be permanently damaged, but at the same time, he seems to have a directive that he must abide by the committee's decisions. That's why when he is alone with the supervisor early in the episode, number two says of number 86, if that woman makes one mistake, we could lose number six. Do you hear loser? And he taps his temple where the lobotomy goes. I think number two assigns number 86 precisely for the reasons he stated, to help number six with the committee because number 86's prior committee experience with being posted as disharmonious. When number six persists in being a dick to everyone and the committee eventually decides to treat him with instant social conversion, number two is forced to get creative. He maintains the public appearance that he is abiding by the committee's decisions by going along with the procedure but has the lobotomy faked to avoid permanent damage to number six. I love the bit after the social group meeting when number six pops out of the bushes to be greeted by a guy telling him it's time for your medical with no dialogue. You can totally see number six sizing these guys up, deciding whether or not to fight them, and that they also are ready to attack him if they need to, but 3 greater than 6, so he acquiesces and goes with them. I love the aversion therapy sequences, so creepy. I love the direction in this episode as well as McGee's most McGooey herky-jerky performance. Him spinning around in the chair, the lights go out, come back on, and the committee have vanished. I love his brief moments alone with the butler, who around this time really started to suspect it might be number one. Just Dylan's side note, there's a director whose name is McGee, so I don't think that's coming across quite the way you might intend, Sergeant Drano. I love the scene leading up to the lobotomy where number 2 clarifies to number 6 that conversion is the, quote, isolation of the aggressive tendencies of the brain. Aggressive frontal lobes of the brain. Some of the lines are blurring together. Then number 6 hears a cheerful announcement inviting people to watch his lobotomy, and he goes outside to see that mob headed right for him. The scene where number 6 makes more tea may be a bit of a tell since he puts sugar in the tea, when normally it is a matter of record that number 6 does not take sugar. I too was confused by number 86's statement, I'm higher than number 2. However, I think this was meant to be comedy with double meaning. What she actually says is, I'm higher than number 2, I have to report, when number 2 is sending out a request for her to report immediately. I'm higher than number 2 refers both to her loopy drug-induced state as well as to the fact that her number 86 is higher than number 2 or number 1. Ergo, she is subordinate to them and has to report. And number 86 is not, quote, the doctor that designed the whole thing, unquote. She isn't a doctor. She's just an operative for number 2 who serves as a technician to turn the dial on the machine so that number 2 can fake the lobotomy. And number 2's attempt to find out why number 6 resigned strikes me as more of an impromptu why not give it a shot opportunity than anything that any overarching plot of the episode was leading up to. And number 2 didn't order number 86 to go pick flowers. She just never made it back to report. In her drugged out state, she just wandered off until number 6 found her. When number 6 hypnotizes number 86, I often wonder if that watch she uses with the little green light is meant to be the electropass from episode 1, which they allow him to keep. It isn't number 6's regular watch. I love some of the dialogue in this episode. Number 42, you're trying to undermine my rehabilitation, disrupt my social progress. Number 6, strange talk for a poet. Number 6, please don't be angry. Number 2, I'm not angry, my dear friend. That is just the way things seem to be to you because your new world is so quiet by contrast. In particular, I love driving Miss Drano nuts with that particular response whenever I want to disagree with her about something. Classic. Namaste. Sergeant Drano, Station 7, the door. I don't know if there's any evidence for Sergeant Drano's interpretation of that episode. I suppose there's no evidence for our interpretation either, but I do think that number 86 is a medical technician because she is the one who explains the entire procedure, which she knows more of the procedure than I think someone who's just a number 2 plant would know. At least that's my opinion.
Makes sense, I guess. I just don't know.
I also did get the impression that like all the lobotomies were faked and it was just mind control drugs and all of them. But anyway. And now on to Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling. So, Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling, also known as the longest, most awkward title of any episode ever. I get the feeling a lot of fans don't particularly like this episode, but I do. There's the downside of not having much McGowan in it, but I feel like we get a lot more background about number 6 in this episode than we have previously. The beginning of the episode feels extra special to me, extra important somehow with its cold open and its hauntingly different theme music. This episode marks another appearance by the village soldiers as they grab number 6 from his house. I find these guys tend to show up more often towards the end of the series. Normally they stay hidden in secure areas of the village, unseen by the regular citizens. The first time I saw this episode, I thought perhaps we were finally learning the details of why number 6 resigned via events he was involved in shortly before his resignation. Upon later viewing, I don't think it's as clear-cut as that, but I think you could still mark the Salzman affair down as possibly being related to those reasons. We learned via Janet that number 6 has been missing for about a year, and it seems like the initial Salzman affair and number 6's resignation happened around the same time. Number 6, having been engaged to Janet Portland all this time, tallies with his statement to number 8 in the Chimes of Big Ben that he doesn't have a wife, but also makes his relative disinterest in other women consistent with having a fiancée. Some of the Lotus driving footage is actually outtakes from the Prisoner opening sequence. You can sometimes tell it's McGee in the car, the director. The Undertaker constantly showing him with the gas gun is the same actor who plays the Undertaker in the opening sequence. He's shadowing him, sorry, not showing. Cool details number 6 gives us upon revisiting his offices. PR12, what is your name? Number 6, code or real. PR12, code. Number 6, in France, Duval. In Germany, Schmidt. You would know me best as ZM73, and your code number is PR12. This episode offers us additional evidence that number 6's employers are not behind his abduction. Sir Charles Portland appears to be the big boss of this organization, but seems to have no prior knowledge of number 6 being back in town prior to him showing up. Number 6 is already being shadowed by the Undertaker prior to visiting his offices, and after Sir Charles becomes aware of him, Sir Charles also has him followed by Agent X before. This would be redundant if Sir Charles is already also having him followed by the Undertaker, plus the Undertaker takes out X before when he extracts number 6 and Salzman at the end. This episode can also be used as evidence that number 6's escape from the village in Many Happy Returns was not planned, as it gives us an example of how the village maintains monitoring of number 6 via the Undertaker when they let him out of the village on purpose. No one was seen following him around in Many Happy Returns. The guy who plays the Colonel, i.e. number 6 in a different body, is Nigel Stark. I think he did a pretty decent job, though obviously his demeanor and performance is a lot different than Patrick McGowan's. Stark was a decorated World War II British officer who retired at the rank of Major. You can see Nigel Stark and Patrick McGowan play opposite each other in a delightful episode of Danger Man Season 3, Loyalty Always Pays, in which he plays another major. I believe this is the episode that was made while Patrick McGowan was filming Ice Station Zebra, or Zebra, if you're British, which is why he is largely absent from the episode. Ice Station Zebra is the movie where he plays British intelligence agent, quote, David Jones, unquote. The name is in scare quotes because that is how it is listed in several other sources. Perhaps there is some doubt that this is the character's real name. In the movie, the, quote, Jones, unquote, character wears a distinctive long-sleeve black polo shirt, which is the same shirt number 6 wears when he resigns in, quote, Arrival, unquote. And also the same shirt worn by John Drake in at least 3 episodes of Danger Man. That's Two of Us, Sorry, The Man on the Beach, The Man Who Wouldn't Talk. I think it likely that this is Patrick McGowan's own clothing. This episode marks a big departure for the village in that they are willing to risk damaging or losing number 6 in order to get Salzman. They switch his mind to a different body, which sounds far riskier than the lobotomy they faked in a change of mind. They let him out of the village to roam around talking to people, alerting his former employees, even traveling internationally. We also learned number 6 has been missing for about a year. As such, I would place this episode very close to the end, possibly as episode 14, just behind Girl Who Was Death, Once Upon a Time, and Fallout. Look forward to hearing your take on this one. Be seeing you, Sergeant Drainer, Station 7, the door. I think, like we mentioned in that episode was less about number 6 and more about the village needing to find Salzman for some unknown purpose.
Yeah, I'm just more...
And that's why they did the whole thing.
I'm just more surprised. You know, I knew of Ice Station Zebra. I've never watched it, but I'm just more surprised that he played Davy Jones.
Wow. Wow.
I should watch. Ice Station Zebra is one I've been wanting to watch for a while now, so maybe I'll watch it.
And you can report back.
Yeah. I'll watch it today. Just forego everything else I was planning on doing.
Planning on doing?
Yeah, so I guess I'll take this next one. As we discussed.
Save my throat, thank God.
Yeah. So yeah, Sergeant Drano actually also emailed us about Sapphire and Steel, which we watched in our previous season. So he goes, "Greetings, guys. Not sure if there's a place for this feedback in your podcast anymore." There is. Yeah. So, I mean, anyone who wants to email us can email us about anything, even if it's something we watched a long time ago. Hey, email us about Blake 7. I'd love to discuss Blake 7. But, yeah. So Sergeant Drano goes on. "But all the same, I wanted to respond about Sapphire and Steel, which you will hopefully be pleased to learn that you guys motivated me to finally watch by virtue of the fact that you podcasted on it. I just finished the series and about halfway through your podcast coverage of it. You guys were pretty thorough, so I only have a few comments and observations. One, you guys said eventually they would say Sapphire, Silver, and Steel have been assigned, like Silver was getting equal billing, but they never did. Dang it. Two, interesting/odd to me that for assignment 4, No Face, the intro replaces lead with mercury, possibly because of the comment about mercury being used in mirrors. For assignment 5, lead is back in the intro. But then for assignment 6, we were back to mercury again. One thing that really struck me with the style of the direction, and also with the way sci-fi and mystical/spooky elements are combined, was that it really had a similar feel to what David Lynch and Mark Frost did with the TV series Twin Peaks. So if you enjoyed the atmosphere of Sapphire and Steel, you might want to think about covering Twin Peaks in some capacity at some point. All the best, Sergeant Drano, Station 7, The Door." Well, I think just to hit on your point number 1, I think what we meant by Sapphire, Silver, and Steel was that like when they're listing all of the elements in the intro, they go Sapphire, Silver, and Steel, but then after that they go Sapphire and Steel have been assigned. Never putting Silver in that Sapphire and Steel have been assigned part, even when he's in the episode.
Right.
I mean, I never even noticed the switches. I mean, we talk about like how the Prisoner does weird stuff with the intro sometimes, and a lot of times with the outro, it'll have like weird credits and like neat Easter eggs and stuff. But like, I didn't notice that at all. But Sapphire and Steel did it somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I didn't.
Sapphire and Steel, like that entire Sapphire and Steel was definitely a part of it, and that entire period of like however many, like that month and a half of my life is just like a blur to me. Just because of all the stuff that was going down. Like,
I mean, I don't remember it very well. That was right. That was the first Inevitable season recorded in lockdown.
It was that. It was like we were watching serialized Doctor Who and Sapphire and Steel and watching 3 movies every other week. And like a bunch of other stuff was happening in my life that just made that month and a half like
great.
Not great. Yeah. Yeah, as far as Twin Peaks, yeah, I mean, maybe we could cover Twin Peaks. I don't know if it's like sci-fi as such, but I mean, hell, like we're kind of stretching this definition.
The Prisoner.
So, yeah.
Speaking of what we're doing next, we also have an email from someone who hasn't reached out before, but they didn't sign the email, so I won't say their name. But the email is just so. Since you've done Blake 7, any plans for something weirder? Say, like, Lex? Which makes this person like the second or third person to recommend Lex to us.
This is just Sergeant Drano on another email. Voting twice for Lex.
Drano.
Yeah, we're heavily considering Lex.
Yeah, I mean, this email prompted a text exchange between Keon and I this week where we were like, oh, wait, we don't actually know like what we're going to do next.
No. Well, we kind of do, but like it's not for sure.
We have some vague plans. Lex is a really long show, so if we did it for Inevitable, that would like kill any ability to do other shows unless we split it up by season.
We would split it up by season, I think.
So
if you're listening to this way far in the future, then you already know what we decided to do.
Yeah, I mean, I also do like how the text you sent me, Keon, you skipped season 2 of Space 1999, just FYI.
Oh, wait, what?
You skipped straight from S1 to S3.
Oh, well, there is no season 3, so I meant season 2.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you invent something? I don't know. There are a lot of shows that I also want to do that are like short or shorter.
No.
I want to do V at some point because I've heard good things about V, the original miniseries.
Yeah, V
which
for
is
Vendetta, right? No, I'm kidding.
Well, the original V miniseries is 2 super miniseries and then 1 series of 19 episodes. So that's like not long. It's like the same length as a Prisoner, basically.
Yeah, almost.
I mean, there are a lot of things I want to do, and a lot of them are like quite long, though. Which is fine. It just would like kill my drive, really. Like, honestly, I'm gonna just be honest. Like, doing Blake 7 for 52 episodes in a row with Doctor Who every week, like, just killed my drive to like do anything. Which is why Inevitable didn't come out till a year after Zenith finished, because I know I personally was just completely DOA on any new podcasts or new shows.
Yeah, speaking of which, it's almost been a year since we started Inevitable.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about. It's been about 11
and we've done
months
4 drastically different shows.
Yeah.
And that's what's great about it.
Yeah, and that's why I think if we can find shorter shows that are good, I think that's probably what we want to focus on, to get more shows in instead of, having to spend a year or 2 on a single show.
Until we run out of short shows, which we will.
We already are, kind of. I mean,
we already are.
Yeah. If you know any good
like UFO
13 or fewer episode sci-fi shows, recommend them to us.
We've got UFO. We've got the Prisoner reboot.
Well, UFO is since it's related to Space 1999, like, yeah, it's kind of part of all of that. And then there was that movie that they made. That was...
We've got 2 weeks to figure this out. I hope you know that. We've got 2 weeks to figure out what we're doing next.
We already know what we're doing right next, but like, yeah.
That's true. We already know what season 5 of Inevitable is going to be. And it's going to make all the people who want us to do Lex really sad. Let's just say that.
Lex.
Because it's not Lex. Sorry, guys. Spoiler alert. It's not Lex.
Anyway, we also have a Facebook comment this week, which episode was this on? Oh, this was on a change of mind from our Facebook post on it, from Boz. So he goes, it's not really about a change of mind, his comment, but I think McGowan wanted only 7 episodes originally, so you can always just pick 7 favorites and ignore the others, including this one, ? For sure, but it does have some good McGowan moments. And yeah, I agree with that. It has some good moments. I just responded by like, I picked watching Dance of the Dead 7 times in a row.
I picked the first 10 minutes of Arrival, the final 40 minutes of Chimes of Big Ben, and then just a change of mind 6 times over.
Yeah, I mean, look, like, get ready, folks. Like, we're going to have our own custom viewing orders. I hope you all are ready to dive into that at the end as we wrap up The Prisoner and decide what truly...
As we take it as a complete joke, like we all know we will. Okay, well, my throat is on fire. It's like way later than normal.
Here for 4 hours. Almost.
So I'm ready to call this episode over.
Same.
So if you'd like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decadentvegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on The Prisoner, on the Wild West. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on any podcast platform pretty much at Inevitable Classic Sci-Fi Podcast. Leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. Next time we're going to be watching The Girl Who Was Death, but until then, the end.